Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome. This is Wacky Wednesday on the Arrowhead Addict channel. I'm Adam Best here as always with Sterling Holmes and producer Richard. Sterling, how's it going, man?
Good, man. It's good. We're so close. So damn close. And luckily the Chiefs played the first game. So that means when the NFL starts, the Chiefs season starts.
I'm really excited about that. That's going to mean the return of us having guests that are experts on other teams. It's going to mean the return of Hot Take Kingdom more frequently. It's going to mean a lot of things. We have a lot of fun during the season. Not that we don't during the off season, but I'm just, when we get to this point, we're having fantasy drafts, you can just smell the football and it just needs to get here already. But we're basically a week away and it's time for a three-peat, right?
Yeah, I cannot bleeping wait. Before we get into a very fun segment that we're going to get into, a couple questions that I want to get off just the very start because I know we're going to have them. So this way we can direct people to the beginning of the podcast if they need any update on some thoughts here. The Chiefs are signing Samaje Perine. Obviously, he was let go by the Broncos. Samaje Perine coming into Kansas City. Nice third down back. Great receiving back as well. Should help at least alleviate some of the concerns behind Isaiah Pacheco, as well as what is going to happen on third down. The Chiefs have a practice squad of 15 players, guys who were waived yesterday, and they have now signed back onto the Chiefs practice squad. Chu Godric was not on this because he's part of the international exemption on the practice squad, so he's not one of those. The Chiefs still have room for one more player on the practice squad. Nick Jones was waived because of the addition of cornerback Eric Scott. Matt Derrick had some great news on this. Looks like it's Amani Bailey, Swayze Bozeman, Deion Bush, Cole Christensen, Taylor Cupp, Matt Dickerson, Neil Farrell, Keontae Ingram, Keith Taylor. But it looks like LRZ is considering the Jacksonville offer according to Schultz report. So there's your LRZ update. Looks like the Jags are intrigued.
Okay, well, I hope the best for him. And in either way, I think if he just makes the practice squad, the money's so good in the NFL, he'll probably make more money sitting on the practice squad for a year than he would, going back overseas and playing rugby. I know that's kind of wild because he was a rugby star, but that's just kind of the way it is. And actually, this is the first I've heard about Samaje Perine. I've just been prepping for the show and didn't even hear that yet. So Samaje, you're a good player, but you owe us one. You owe us a Super Bowl because a lot of people think back to that Tyreek Hill not getting in the end zone, but they don't think about that 50-yard touchdown or whatever it was that Samaje Perine caught in the into the second quarter in the 2021 AFC Conference Championship. But this is the exact kind of guy they need, a guy that's he's accustomed to being the second or third back in a platoon. He good hands, and he doesn't mind sticking his nose in there in pass protection. He's got, he's bigger than Jerick McKinnon, right? So I think he's going to hold up in that role, even if he doesn't offer as much juice.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you're at with Samaje?
Yeah, again, I just think he's a third down back exclusively. I think you have Pacheco. I think you have Carson Steele. I think you have him. I think CEH, it would be your game day inactive. That's where I view it. Maybe early on, you wait to let Samaje get up to speed. But I think he's your break in case of emergency. I don't know what he's bringing positively greater than Steele or Samaje in their respective backup roles.
Totally on the same page. Yeah, I think he's going to have a lot of days not dressing, and he kind of had his shot. Samaje is not sexy, but he's extremely serviceable, and I think he's going to fit in well. Well, unless we've got anything else on the news, we're going to jump into our first segment, and that is the Chiefs versus the NFC South preview. Now, we already did the AFC North. These are the two divisions that the Chiefs play, the entire division. So we thought we'd take a deep look. 5 questions for each opponent. We'll try to keep things as Chiefs-centric as possible. And we'll start alphabetically with what I think is the most exciting team in the division, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. And also, it's the first team the Chiefs play. They play them in week 3, big Sunday night tilt, which should be fun. I think it's the first time Kirk Cousins is going to be in prime time in Atlanta, which we all know prime time isn't exactly Kirk Cousins' best friend. But let's jump into the questions. The Falcons were 30th in pressure rate last year. Will adding edge Matthew Judon, who they just acquired in a trade, help them get after Patrick Mahomes?
It's better than it was, but the answer is no. I trust the Chiefs' offensive line, and I trust Patrick Mahomes. If you told me, will Mahomes get sacked in this game, I'd probably lean more towards the no. Not saying he can't, not saying he won't, but again, I believe in Mahomes. I don't think the rest of the Falcons' pass rush is anything great. Judon's a really nice player. It was a good move for Atlanta. I'm not knocking the move, but I just don't see it being a major factor in this game.
I don't either. He's a good player. I think they did what they had to do. They look at a weak division in a weak conference and say, can we back our way into a playoff run? Can we be actual, accidental Super Bowl contenders? Maybe, but not with the previous pass rush. The other guys are defensive interior, Grady Jarrett. He had a torn ACL last year. And then you have a pair of second rounders in Arnold Ebiketie and out of Penn State, and Rook Arororo. I think that's actually how you say it, right? I know it sounds like Scooby-Doo, but I swear to God that is, I believe, the correct pronunciation. But both those guys are developmental projects. And I don't know if you saw this. Kingsley Suamataia, was PFF's highest graded tackle in the preseason for rookies. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about Big Kingsley in this matchup in particular, but also given the strength of the interior line and that Atlanta's interiors on the defensive side is rather weak, I just think this is a matchup that Kansas City is going to win handedly. Mahomes negates pressure on his own. So good luck, Matthew Judon and the rest of those guys.
Yeah. Number 2, historically, Spag's defense can be a little soft against the run, especially in the regular season. Will Bijan Robinson, as well as up front Chris Lindstrom in the running game, gash the Chiefs' defense?
A little bit. I think early in the season, Spags doesn't want to pull out a lot of his cards. They also are a little bit of a run funnel defense. They'd rather have you take 5 or 6 at a time than get an explosive play of 40 yards or whatever. They're just not going to let you get explosive plays. So this is a good line. Chris Lindstrom, he's got to be up there for best guard in the league with guys like Joe Thuney. He's that good. Bijan Robinson is a special talent. I think the new offensive staff is going to use him more than Arthur Smith did the previous regime. So I think they're going to have a good day, but I think Nick Bolton and co will ultimately contain them and not let them run too wild.
Yeah, and I sure hope that Nick Bolton's brace will be off by then. We'll see. It's week 3. He talked about how he'll be starting the season with the brace, how it won't affect him, but I would still like to see Nick Bolton full health against a great running back like Chris Lindstrom.
Number 3.
I mean, Bijan Robinson. I'm sorry. This is my 3rd podcast in the past 3 hours after doing 4 hours of radio today. I meant Bijan Robinson.
Chris Lindstrom would be a load to tackle. He would.
Yeah,
be.
Beefy dude.
Not as fast.
Beefy dude.
Number 3. Are Jesse Bates and new acquisition Justin Simmons now the best safety duo in the league?
It's a great call. They have to be up there. Justin Simmons is phenomenal. He's on the downswing of his career, but he's still a really good player. Jesse Bates was phenomenal last year, dude. Like, I surprisingly so. I thought when he left the Bengals, you're like, okay, we'll see. Dude was a stud. I think you can make the case that, yeah, this probably is the best safety duo in the NFL. Again, I think safety is not the most important position by any means, but these are two really good players, and you'll never knock two really good players. I might say yes. I'm trying to think of the top of my head, who would be better. The Niners have Hufanga and was it Gibson?
Yeah, most of the guys I can think of, Antoine Winfield, you just keep going down the list. They don't really have a star running mate. So for me, I'm going to say yes. I know they're aging. Jesse Bates hasn't had any fall off whatsoever. Like you said, I think he was one of the 5 best free agent ads of last season in the whole league. He was that good for this team that desperately needed a leader on defense. And Justin Simmons has slipped a little bit, but these guys are incredibly smart. They have so much experience. I think above the shoulders, they are definitely the best safety duo in the league. And they're going to give this defense that I think will play a lot of too high, some serious versatility and leadership back there. And, probably make things hard a little bit for Travis Kelce and the Chiefs receivers.
Yeah. All right. Number 4, with L'Jarius Sneed gone, do the Chiefs have anybody who could body up contested catch marvel Drake London?
Well, you'd like to have L'Jarius Sneed for this matchup. I mean, you just got to be honest and say that. But I think a couple of guys have the size to maybe be pesky. And that's Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson. I don't think they're going to shut Drake London down by any means. Drake London is a guy who put up 900 yards last year in a terrible situation. Desmond Ridder was his quarterback. The Cardinals cut him yesterday. He wasn't good enough to be the Cardinals' backup. That's how good Drake London is. He is at pinpointing, going up and getting a ball. He's one of the best in the league. So I think those guys are really going to have to frustrate him, press him, and just try to keep him contained, try to keep him to like 60 yards or something like that. I think that would be a win for the young corners that are probably going to be up on Drake London. I don't think Trent McDuffie is a really good matchup for this particular receiver.
Yeah, just because he is, it's not even the size. It's just the fact that he is a high point getter. Like some big players don't play super big. Drake London plays tall. I wouldn't be upset if they put Trent McDuffie on him. I trust Spags and Dave Merritt in the game plan there, but I do think this would be a Williams-Watson game. Maybe Williams for the physicality at the line of scrimmage. Watson just for the height, even if he is a little bit, I always view him at least personally, but a little more slender than Williams. But yeah, I think the Chiefs have the horses to go up against a guy like Drake London. Again, when you're talking about a guy of his talent caliber, we're not saying you're going to hold him to 0, and I'm not saying it's a success if you hold him under 80, but around 45 to 60 yards, I think, is the realistic viewpoint here, and I think 45 to 60 is the goal.
I'd be super happy with that. Again, he's one of the best above the rim receivers in the league. He's putting his name in the same ranks as DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, guys like that. That's how good of a contested catch merchant he is. So I think they just got to keep him in check. And there's also Kyle Pitts, who's kind of been frustrating and not really broken out like they expect him to, but he's also someone the Chiefs are going to have to contend with.
Yeah.
Number 5, will quarterback Kirk Cousins still be rusty when the week 3 matchup goes down? Remember, he tore his Achilles last year during the season while playing with the Vikings.
It's such a hard question when I don't know Kirk's body. I'll say no, because he seems like a grinder. Like we all watched quarterback. We all saw what he went through and how he trains and all that stuff. Mentally, especially, I think he'll be top shape, and that's a big part of him. I think his body will be good enough. So no, I won't say he'll be rusty. I'll say he'll be good to go full strength week 3 versus the Chiefs.
Yeah, he's a pro's pro. He's been in the league for a long time. He's kind of like this I don't know. He's got like youth pastor energy. This is not a guy who's screwing around in the offseason. He's taking care of his body. He's focused. He's going to be ready. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about this game as a trap game, just because I think the Chiefs emotionally are going to be really up for the Baltimore Ravens, who were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, and then the Cincinnati Bengals in week 2, who are arguably the Chiefs' biggest rival at this point. This could be a little bit of a trap game or a letdown game in week 3. And I think everybody gets up for the Chiefs, but I think Atlanta in particular at home on Sunday night is going to be really fired up for this particular game.
Yeah. Again, it means more to Atlanta. They got a lot to prove in this one.
Sure. Let's move on to our next team, the Carolina Panthers. Not the sexiest team in the league, but we still have to discuss them nonetheless. Number 1, who is the most underrated player in the league, and why is it wide receiver Deontay Johnson?
My love and fandom for Deontay Johnson. I honestly will say the most underrated player in the league is probably still like Max Crosby. I still think the majority of like national fans, he's starting to get there. Like Max Crosby's not just a fun story, a fun name. Max Crosby's ridiculous. But Deontay Johnson is maybe the best wide receiver that no one talks about. He's been in a horrible situation in Pittsburgh. He's been injured a couple times, but when he's on the field, he's putting up numbers. He's so electric. That's why I said Sky Moore, I was hoping would be a Deontay Johnson type. A guy who doesn't necessarily, he's not the fastest, he's not the quickest, but he's a great route runner. He finds ways to get open. He knows a soft spot. He doesn't have great hands, Deontay Johnson. He drops the football more than you would like. But yeah, they have a decent wide receiver core now. It's not great, but you have Deontay, you have Jonathan Mingo. You obviously brought in Xavier Legette. Adam Thielen's still there, so at least they're improving. They're not good, but they're improving.
A couple of our past favorite draft crushes, you and Legette, me, Mingo. Let's hope one of those guys, for their sake, can kind of emerge. Deontay Johnson, I think it's because he's had some drops and some penalties and some injuries on national televised games. He's just kind of had some bad luck of doing some boneheaded things when the lights are the brightest. So I think that's part of the reputation. But I checked out his profile on Reception Perception, which friend of the show, Matt Harmon, does. And what Matt does is he has this cool little visual for route trees where, you have all the different routes, and then they have the success rate. And if you're over 70%, the arrow for that route is green. He's green on all 9 routes. Yeah. He wins 70% of the time or more on every single route. He legitimately is one of the best people in the league at getting open. And Dave Canales, the new head coach, he says the offense is going to run through him. So I expect him, if you're playing fantasy, I would get him on your roster, especially where he's going.
Yeah, you know me. Why I wanted the Chiefs to get him. Can QB whisperer Dave Canales, who helped revitalize both Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, help Bryce Young turn it around after a disastrous rookie season?
Well, I think it was a smart hire. If you have a rookie quarterback who struggles and his head coach isn't doing him any favors and his offensive line isn't doing him any favors, what do? You bring in somebody who has a proven track record of lifting up struggling quarterbacks, and you solidify, I think, especially the interior of that line that gives quarterbacks the most trouble. So they're doing all the right things. I think Dave Canales is a good coach. I was really impressed what he did with Baker Mayfield. I like Geno Smith quite a bit more than Baker Mayfield from a talent level. So I was pretty impressed with what he did there. I was pretty impressed with what he did with Rachaad White, who I don't think he's Bijan Robinson, let's just say that. So I like Dave Canales. What's your opinion on this situation with Bryce Young? I haven't talked about Bryce Young at all. So
I don't think he's an NFL. I don't think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I said it before he was drafted. I feel bad. I interviewed him the draft morning, actually. Really nice guy. Like, I think he's seemed like a great dude. But there are some signs. I was like, I just don't see it. I just don't. And maybe he will completely prove me wrong, but the size was a major concern. And he doesn't have Kyler Murray's quickness. I don't think he has Kyler Murray's arm strength, and he's the outlier. Like whenever I was like, yeah, but Drew Brees did it. Yeah, well, Drew Brees is the outlier. Let's not use the outliers. When everyone's like, yeah, well, Spud Webb played in the NBA. Yeah, a long time ago, and we always have to point to him. Something like with Muggsy Bogues. Like we don't have to just sit here and always pick out the outlier and say they're going to be great. It's show me the normal base case. What's base case? Not best case, base case. And I didn't see it with Bryce. I hope for him because he seems like a good dude that he takes a step forward. But I think for the Panthers, they made the right decision here.
You said that you don't see it, and he doesn't see it either. That's the problem. He doesn't see the middle of the field. He's too short. Right
decision with Canales. I don't mean right decision drafting him over CJ Stroud, because I said from the get-go CJ Stroud for Bryce Young. I meant right decision trying something to bring something new and give him weapons this time around, pay money for the offensive line. That's what I mean by right decision.
I feel you. I was an Anthony Richardson guy. This was always a head scratcher for me, but you have him in the building. You gave up a lot to get him. You gave up a top 10 pick, another first rounder, DJ Moore. I don't know what else. You gave up a king's ransom to get him. So this is smart. You bring in the right coach. You bring in offensive line help. You bring in receiver help. They have to find out now if this is the guy. They can't spend 3 or 4 years languishing with a mediocre quarterback. They got to find out now. So for me, it's the right move.
Yeah.
Number 3, will star running back Jonathan Brooks be at full strength by November 24th? He's starting the season on the PUP list. He's a rookie.
So you'd have September 5th. I'll just go in 7th because it's easier. What week is this? It's
the 24th.
So 4 weeks, a month. Yeah, he should be full strength.
They're presumably taking it slow with him since they don't expect to be a true playoff contender or anything. Why rush him?
But even if it's 6 weeks, he would have 2 weeks to get back up to speed. That's 8 weeks away. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. That's pretty late in the season. That's Thanksgiving. So yeah, I think we should expect to see Jonathan Brooks. He's a very good player. I think he's going to be a real good running back, a top 10 type running back in the NFL, maybe as soon as the end of the season. So again, I think that's going to be a test for Nick Bolton and co.
Number 4, the Panthers spent roughly $150 million on guards Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis this offseason. Will they be enough to slow down Chris Jones and the Chiefs' defensive line?
The National Guard ain't enough to slow down Chris Jones. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are fairly good players, especially Hunt, but I don't know. If you asked me that question about Joe Tooney or Chris Lindstrom, I would still say no. Chris Jones is one of the 5 best defensive players on the planet. So I think it's going to help. If they had last year's offensive line against Chris Jones, I would pray for Bryce Young's life. You know what I mean? But it's still not enough.
Yeah, I'm with you.
You're like, what else needs to be said? Chris Jones is Chris Jones. Number 5, but seriously, is this the worst team in the NFL?
Them or New England? Broncos have a case too.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd probably
pretty bad.
I'd probably still say the Panthers, but I have liked a couple of the moves they've made. But liking a couple of the moves they've made is different than saying they're a good team. They went from irrelevancy from the worst team in football to maybe a 4.5 is where I'd probably set the line. And I'm probably taking the under.
And they're one of these teams. It's like, where are the stars at? Where's the firepower, right? I just don't see it. Maybe Jonathan Brooks and a few of these guys they brought in are they're future stars, but right now the cupboard looks bare.
Yeah.
We've said enough about that team. So let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. A little bit more exciting, but also a team sort of in flux. I think they're descending, not ascending anymore. And it's weird. They're just trying to slow that down, that descent, as much as possible instead of just pulling off the Band-Aid, right? So the first question, this is going to be Dennis Allen's 6 years as a head coach. If you guys remember, he did 3 years with the Raiders a while back and now 3 with the Saints. Is he even a good coach?
No, he is not. I do not think Dennis Allen is a good head coach. They have had talent in New Orleans, and he has done nothing with it. I don't think he's a good head coach. Probably a really good DC, right? I think he's probably a really good DC, but I think he's out over his skis right now as a head coach.
Totally with you. I think they want continuity in that building, but he's one of these guys. He's a Romeo Crennel, where he's a fantastic defensive coordinator, but for some reason, when you make him CEO of the franchise and you expect him to also like account for the offense and lead the team and just make all those decisions, it just doesn't work out for him. So I expect their defense to play over its head again, because they always do. He's a good DC, but this is going to be his last year in New Orleans, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Number 2, will Derek Carr survive the season as a starting quarterback, or will this be a Raiders rerun where they pull the plug and then go with the rookie Spencer Rattler?
Well, they brought in a new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. He was, his name will be familiar for people that know his dad, but he's the 49ers ex-passing game coordinator. So did a great job last year with that passing attack, and Brock Purdy, of course, Kyle Shanahan, and all the talent there have something to do with that. But I think it's a good hire. He'll try to bring some new ideas to this offense. Derek Carr has had his chances for the Raiders. I was about to say Oakland, Vegas, whatever. But I think in year 2, if he doesn't look any better, why not see what you have in Spencer Rattler? I know Spencer Rattler's stars diminished considerably from the peak when people thought at one point he was going to be the number 1 pick. But what if you can get him back on track? Why not find out?
I think it's Derek Carr. I think he lasts the whole season. They'll go 8-9, 9-8. Dennis Allen's probably canned. You can't just sit that long in mediocrity. But I think Derek Carr finishes the season as a starting quarterback. I think he's still a fine quarterback. I think last year was just a disaster for a multitude of reasons. Part of it's because I like Derek Carr, so maybe I'm being a little biased here. One of my favorite guys I've ever interviewed was Derek Carr. He is so just glowing about Chiefs Kingdom, Chiefs fans. He even understands how much like they hate him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, like I get that." But it's part of the rivalry. It's part of the game. Like he almost enjoys it. Like he gets it. It was rare. And one of those moments where you're like, you know what? You're a really good guy. Like, even if I hated you for a long time, you're still a good guy. You're a good guy to hate. And maybe I'm being biased here, but I still think he's a pretty solid NFL quarterback.
I don't even know how you could hate Derek Carr. I mean, I just feel sorry for him. The way he was stranded with that Raiders franchise, just in purgatory there. That said, he is a super nice guy, but I think at this point, I don't even know if I'd put him in the top 16 quarterbacks, the top half of starting quarterbacks. He just doesn't seem to have it. It was brutal last season watching him check down to Alvin Kamara 15 times a game. So,
yeah.
Number 3 former Chiefs on the starting defense. Defensive tackle Colin Saunders, offensive linebacker Willie Gay, and safety Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. Will they get their revenge on Monday Night Football?
No, they will not. I think it's a decently tough game, but no. They're ex-Chiefs for a reason.
Sure. Is the revenge?
I appreciate all they've done, but they're no longer Chiefs for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are reasons each one of them were let go. With the Honey Badger, it's just too old for a defensive back in the Chiefs' current regime. And the other guys, I think, popped at moments, but never really quite became a player that you absolutely had to keep, especially when you have superstars that you have to pay, and that requires tough choices. So I also think the revenge game narrative might be the most overrated thing in national football coverage. So I just don't think I'm sure they're going to be fired up and excited to be back in Arrowhead, but beyond that, nah.
Doesn't move the needle.
Nah.
All right. Number 4. Does this team have even one true star player on the roster?
No, because Honey Badger, former star, might even be a Hall of Fame candidate. I think he is, but he's not the same anymore. Alvin Kamara, still a good player, that very useful, especially as a receiver. Not the same player he once was. That's the same thing with cornerback Marshawn Latimer, the same thing with middle linebacker Demario Davis, all past their prime. Still useful, good players, not stars any longer. So the closest thing they have is wide receiver Chris Olave, who I think is entering his third year out of Ohio State. Really great route runner, strong technician, but I just don't think you can call him a star yet. He hasn't done enough. Maybe if he puts up 1,400 yards this year and 10 touchdowns and in that system, we can say, okay, he's a superstar, but he's just not quite there yet.
I think Chris Olave will become a star this year. I'm all in on his development. I think I'd probably still put, man, it's a great question. I don't know if I'd still put Davis and Lattimore in a star player. I think Lattimore I might still put as a star. Demario Davis I'd probably just put as still a really good player. I think Lattimore I'd probably still consider a star corner.
That's more talent than the Panthers have. So number 5, this offseason, Pro Football Focus ranked the Saints offensive line 32nd in the league. That's dead last. Will George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, and co. have a field day against them?
They should, but knowing the Chiefs, they play up and down their competition. We've seen how many times have we seen a banged up offensive line and we go, the Chiefs defensive line is going to feast. And then that's the game they get no pressure. And then they'll be like, well, this offensive line is very good. It's going to be hard for the Chiefs to get pressure. And lo and behold, they step up and all of a sudden they look like they're going up against a bunch of peewee football players. It makes no sense. On paper, yeah, they should feast. I'll say yes, but they better feast. Come on. Chris Jones, you want your money? You want that extra sacks? Big Macs for sacks? Come on. Now's your time.
This line should be a lot better than it is. They've spent 4 recent first-round picks on this line, and they don't have much to show for it. I won't run through everybody, but Ryan Ramczyk, right tackle's out for the season. The rest of the guys aren't looking good. So they're really going to have to hit on the big rookie out of Oregon State. I just think the Chiefs are really going to wreck this offensive line. It's going to be kind of a banner day, especially on the outside. Their tackles are just – Trevor Penning got benched last year. It's not looking good.
FAU, better do you. If FAU does not look good in this game, then I will be even more disappointed.
But, you're keeping the candle lit, holding out hope, all that. You've been telling Chiefs fans not to get impatient. A lot of defensive linemen don't pop their first year. And the thing I'll say about FAU is, I think my dog's having a nightmare. And FAU's
what's going on? Is that your dog whining, or is it? I thought someone's
sleep.
doing like pivot drills, like with shoes and
basketball. With the squeaky Jordans or whatever.
Squeaking shoes, yeah.
Yeah, that's what she does when she's having a nightmare. And we brought up FAU's rookie year, and I just think it, scared the dickens out of her, and I don't blame her. But yeah, he also was kind of a glorified second-round pick. Right. I mean, let's be honest. There are like 20 guys in every draft class that are true first rounders, and a guy that gets picked 31st overall, I wouldn't call necessarily someone you expect to become a blue chip player. Not making excuses,
at least
but
be good.
Yeah. He should be a starter. I mean, you expect a starter, not a star.
Yeah.
Our last team, finally, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Definitely like to beat them and beat them good every time we play them. We still have not forgotten about Super Bowl 55. Let's hit up the first question. Tristan Wirfs and Luke Godke are a fine pair of tackles. Can Duke center Graham Barton push this offensive line over the top?
It's a really good offensive line. Their guards aren't great, but I love Tristan Wirfs. To them, it's almost always been health, right? Like it's always almost been health with the Buccaneers offensive line. If they stay healthy, it's pretty good. Baker Mayfield's not a immobile quarterback, but he's not Lamar. He's not Mahomes back there making plays, but
he thinks he is though.
No, sometimes. He makes some plays. Yeah, I'll say this is a top half offensive line. I'll say they're 12 to 16.
I'll give them this. Maybe dropping in a center that looks like he could be this year's version of, not to the same extent, but like a Creed Humphrey type draft pick. That's going to help the guards. That's going to really help the guards, especially when you have two strong tackles. One of them is really strong. Did you ever see that video of Wirfs jumping out of the pool and landing on his feet?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, just insane for a guy. I mean, what he's got to be like 6'5", 330 or something to do that.
Nuts.
So, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty good offensive line. But again, it's not the Saints, but I still think the Chiefs are going to have the advantage here with Chris Jones and Karlaftis. And I'm trying to think when this game is. I don't think Omenihu will be back for it. I think it's in the first half of the season, but I'd have to check on that.
Number 2, is 31-year-old wide receiver Mike Evans ever going to slow down? If not, can you at least tell Adam Best where the fountain of youth is?
I would like to know. So, but how do you know I haven't discovered it? Everyone thinks I'm younger than I am. So anyway, Mike
You're
Evans.
52, right?
Mike Evans.
I'm kidding, Best. You don't look a day over 37.
Okay, I'll take that. Mike Evans, I've kind of been a notorious hater of his, and finally I'm just waving the white flag because he's just good. He's just good. He gets open, he goes up and gets the ball. He's as consistent as any player in the league, even if he hasn't had those like blow your hair back, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams like seasons. He is 1,000 yards like clockwork. I'm not going to doubt him. I think he'll show up and have a good year.
Yeah. You can't doubt Mike Evans. He perpetually puts up numbers. It's all he does. Death, taxes, Mike Evans, 1,000 yards. Number 3.
And a fight with Marshawn Lattimore, probably. Right?
Good call there. Number 3, will roller coaster quarterback Baker Mayfield regress again as we've seen previously?
Unfortunately for him, I think yes. He has a lot of hubris. I don't mean this in a mean way, but I think sometimes as a player, you have to know your limits. Unless you're Patrick Mahomes, you have to know your limits. And sometimes he doesn't. Every time he gets on a roll as a quarterback, we see regressions time and time again with him. We saw that definitely in Cleveland when he had the good rookie year. He regressed. He kind of looked like he was turning the corner again. Then he regressed again. He just can't string together any consistency. I think he's one of these guys that he's a fringe starter who can get hot from time to time, but I just don't expect him to have prolonged success as a starting quarterback in this league.
I'll say he does what he did last year. I think he was good last year. I don't think it was great last year, but he was good last year. I'll give Baker Mayfield good. I don't think he regresses this year, and I think he puts up very similar numbers.
Keep in mind, Dave Canales, his quarterback whisperer from last year, is now in Carolina in Charlotte with Bryce Young. So something to keep in mind. Number 4, safety Antoine Winfield is great, but can the secondary slow down a revamped Chiefs passing attack after they traded Carlton Davis, the cornerback, to Detroit?
No, I don't think any. Sorry, I don't think any defense can. I really don't. I think this Chiefs offense is going to be electric this year. I think you're looking at a top 3 offense, top 5 for sure, but probably a top 3 offense in the NFL. The short answer is no. No, the Bucs will not be able to slow down this Chiefs wide receiver core.
I agree. I mean, I really like Antoine Winfield too, but Carlton Davis was their version of L'Jarius Sneed. It is hard to move on from a guy like that. I don't know. I just don't. Jamel Dean as their CB1, he's like always hurt. I don't really like the safeties that much. The other safeties. And like you said, I think the Chiefs receiving core is being slept on a little bit. Now, Hollywood Brown getting hurt. Rashee Rice, I think a lot of people assumed he was going to get suspended this season. So just not a lot of people are talking about them. And Mahomes has done so well with lackluster receiver play that I think people are just not focused on it. And also maybe some people expect because Sky Moore was a whiff. Kadarius Toney, I think we can officially call a failure, even though he had the great Super Bowl moments. Maybe they're expecting Xavier Worthy to be like them. I'm kind of expecting him to be more like Rashee Rice as a rookie. So I think he's going to pleasantly surprise Chiefs fans and maybe unpleasantly surprise the rest of the country.
Finally, number 5, Rachaad White was one of the least efficient runners in the league last year, but is a dynamic pass catching back. Can he capitalize on what has been a past weak spot for the Kansas City Chiefs?
To some extent. And this is another thing that Spags and the defense, sometimes they're willing to cede a little bit of this to keep explosive plays in check. But Drew Tranquil, I think he has the speed and the intelligence and the coverage skills to negate this a little bit. I'm really high on Drew Tranquil in year 2. He knows the system. Spags knows exactly how to use him on the chessboard now. I think I really like the kind of like skill sets, the specialty skill sets of all 3 of these linebackers and how Spags is going to know how to use them and dial them up at the right exact time. So I'm going to say like, it's not going to sting too bad.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs have improved there. I think they've made an effort to improve there. So yeah, I like Rachaad White. I think he's a solid player, but NFC South is atrocious, man. The Falcons are good. I think the Falcons are a good team. The other 3 teams, yikes.
You think we'll go 4-0?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going 4-0 against the AFC North, that's probably not something that's going to happen. I mean, it could happen. I wouldn't put anything past the Chiefs, but that's a gauntlet. This, I would be surprised if they don't go 4-0. I would be shocked if they didn't at least go 3-1. I mean, maybe the Falcons find a way to eke out a victory at home on Sunday night, but the rest of these teams, I think you're being charitable when you say that the Saints are going to go 8-9. I just don't see it. I think the Bucs, they were a playoff team last year. They kind of backed into the playoffs. I don't expect them to make the playoffs again. And I think the Falcons probably are only going to win 10 games. So mark it down. Go ahead and put in pen. 4-0, the Chiefs versus the NFC South.
Love it.
But that's all we've got for you guys on this Wacky Wednesday. Favor for you guys, please. Consider leaving a 5-star review for AA either on Spotify or Apple Podcast. That is the most helpful thing you can do for us. We really, really appreciate it. And Patrick often on the Thursday show, which I'm going to be on more frequently now, he answers those questions if you leave them with those reviews. So be sure to do that if you got some extra time. Join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central right here on the Arrowhead Addict YouTube channel. Until then, go Chiefs.